We acknowledge that together we reside, learn, and create on the land of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Mississauga, Wendake, Neonwencio, and Neutral people.
We seek re-Indigenization. We stand with the Indigenous community and welcome Indigenous voices on this platform. We are grateful to be working and learning on and about this land, and we honor these communities as the traditional stewards of these lands.
Hi, my name's Simi J. Patoka. My pronouns are they, them.
And my name is Cassamorum, and my pronouns are she, her.
And we are
The Dreaming Divas.
We are a podcast inspired by the Screaming Divas.
And our goal is to create a similar platform, but from the perspective of young singers.
And today we got to interview the brilliant Beth Hörst,
who has not only been a teacher to us, but a mentor, mom, and of course, lifelong friend.
That is true. I call her mom to her face. So check it out.
Ding! And so I went down to the lobby, and sure enough, I see someone in a pashmina in the summer with a water bottle and a binder and a huge purse. And I walked over to her and I said, "Are you going to the Met?" She said, "Yes." And so she's from Massachusetts, and we still talk on Facebook, but we shared a cab. We both did well. We both got some form of encouragement award there and some money, and we're told to go back to the north. I see.
Hi!
Recording in progress. That's a creepy little voice.
That's a new thing with Zoom.
Hi! I'm happy to be here on Dreaming Divas, and I happen to be in my Waterloo studio. So I do want to start by acknowledging with respect that I am on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, and that my Waterloo space is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. And since it pertains a little bit, there's a deep history of my people, the Mennonites, and the Six Nations community not far from here. So we continue to try to maintain that and foster that, and that heritage of farming this particular tract of land is great and deep. So acknowledgement with gratitude. Thank you.
This is Beth Hörst, our wonderful teacher, and we're so happy to have her here. Thank you for doing this.
Welcome.
And dealing with our shenanigans on a daily.
On Friday,
Oh yeah. We're gonna start with a 60-second life story.
Okay, 60 seconds, go. So I grew up in St. Jacobs. I took piano first and then voice lessons. Did my first opera when I was 10. I'm all in the Midnight Visitors, and it says right in there, it was like community opera, but it says right in the score, "Do not cast a girl," and they did. And then I went to Western, even though I was sure I was going to U of T, and I studied with Jackie Short, and it was great. And then I was sure I was going to U of T for my master's, but I stayed at Western and studied with Sophie Roland, and it was great. And then in the midst of that, and right after that, I did a lot of competitions. I did the Met twice. I did Palm Beach. I did the oratorio competition at Carnegie Hall much later, but in and around my master's, I probably did about 8 fairly large competitions, not the big European ones by any means, but ones here in North America. I really enjoyed it, did well, had good feedback. So I had some oratorio work. I did a little bit of apprenticing in Europe, and then I did an apprenticeship with Ottawa Opera Lyra and had really good experience there until they went bankrupt, and got a European agent. He went bankrupt, and then got a Canadian agent, and have been doing mostly Canadian oratorio, mostly regional oratorio ever since, and with the odd opera in concert perhaps. And I teach here at home, usually professional little belter folks that work for Stratford and Mirvish and Drayton. And at Western, people like you, largely undergrads, mostly aspiring to performance careers, and a decent amount of crossover training there so that everybody has a variety of genres. 70 seconds, 75. Ah, man, okay.
Well,
right?
since we brought up your schooling, did you want to talk a little bit more about undergrad and masters? And you said apprenticeship. Does that count as a young artist program?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think, pretty interchangeable terminology there. Some people call them apprenticeships. Yeah, we generally call them young artist programs. So Ottawa had, one comparable to Calgary's and Vancouver's. It was very small, and the year we were there, we were able to do Così fan tutte in studio because it's a small cast, and a tour of Hansel and Gretel, which was great. I didn't audition for a specific role. When they told me we were touring Hansel and Gretel, I thought I would be Gretel, and they were like, no, you're going to be the witch, and a portion of the mother, so much bigger singing than I expected. And again, I'd sung Despina at Western. I wasn't sure where they'd cast me, but in the studio, I was Fiordiligi. And so it was a good time. About a year after my master's, I taught for a year, I waitressed that year, and I did some singing between, that was 2009, and then 2010, I went to Ottawa. And I put all the students that I'd acquired on hold, and they graciously waited for me, most of them, when I lived in Ottawa for 6 months. And then there was another little thing, but it was a short apprenticeship too. It wasn't as long as some of them are, and it wasn't as far. So I came home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I was married at the time, and we had a mortgage to pay, and so I lived with a Mennonite couple in Sandy Hill. I called the only Mennonite church I knew in Ottawa and asked if anyone had a room, and they said, oh yeah, we used to rent to grad students. You're like the same thing, right? So I leveraged that, as I have many a time, and cooked with them and got to know them a little bit, and was able to walk to rehearsal at the National Arts Center. So yeah, I went back there to work a few times, but then very quickly after my time there, the entire company folded. Though there's talk that they're coming back, so that would be good. I'm hearing small people afoot, and that's the other part. Your toddler dog flipping around out there, so it's snack time.
I wanted you to talk about competitions a little bit more, because you've won some, which is very cool. And how do you prepare for a competition, like a big kid competition, I should say?
I always checked with my coaches and instructors if they thought I was ready, and I was wisely counseled to wait a little longer for the oratorial competition. I'd have to check my own bio. I think I was later 20s. Like, I'd certainly sung pro oratorio gigs before you go. It's not one that you just do for funsies. And I don't think there's an age cap at all. So when you look at the few competitions that have no age cap, then you're going to get people who are very accomplished, right? Yeah. So, and centered in New York City, you're going to get mostly Americans and some very, very strong Americans. And that factors in. I mean, the Met, I sang in Detroit in my undergrad and Atlanta in my master's. And my first husband being from Florida, we were like, well, maybe we'll just, we'll go visit family and then we'll do Atlanta. And both times someone said, either a participant or a judge or both said, well, you're from Canada, like the Atlanta woman that sticks in my head. She just said to the two winners who were from New York City and Canada, she said, why don't you go back to the North where you belong? And, it is a bit strange when you can go anywhere. A lot of people made a joke that Fargo was the place to do the Met because no one was going to Fargo. So people from New York City were flying there, So anyway, you play the angles as you need to. But there was a carload driving. I heard there was a car going from Western. I think I was in third year. Yeah. And they were all master's students, but I was all, can I go too? And Jackie and I scraped together the 5 arias I had, and that first time that I advanced and got an encouragement award, I was very young. The Met does like young singers. I was singing lighter repertoire, but with some good speed, and you could hear there might be a coloratura in there, but I didn't know what I was, and they didn't know what I was either. And then by Atlanta, I was a little bit more polished. I did advance one more ring, but not all the way to New York, and that was fine by me. I was happy for the feedback and the experience. I met a lot of other singers. I met great judges. You have to balance the investment of time, energy, travel, and therefore money with what the outcome might be for you. So finances were a factor. I was married very young, and we bought a house, and I'd say, okay, I want to do this competition in Atlanta or whatever. And so we'd figure it out around what made sense for us. And then, yes, I generally had success to the degree that it would usually pay for most of the travel and then some. But yeah, I mean, the Mozart competition in Toronto, I met David Bowser through that. And the prize was to work with his group the next year as a soloist. Plus, I don't know, at the time, probably about $1,000 or something, which was great considering I just had to drive to Toronto to do that competition. And then that was a lasting relationship, and I've worked for him several times. And now he runs Pax Christi. So, things like that in particular are really useful. There used to be a competition in Toronto, I don't know if it's still running, New Discoveries, was a whole panel of conductors who generally hired young singers for oratorio and concert work. It's a great competition. It was really an audition, but there were prizes definitely to perform as on top of monetary prizes that were super useful to young artists. And you met other young artists. I mean, I flew to Montreal to sing the Jacqueline Desmarais a couple of times. And, when you do that grant, everybody there is in the same boat. They're at some level of, emergence. And we often joke, how young is a young artist, or, how long until you're not a young artist anymore. But we'd all gab in the foyer and wait for our turn. And it's not that big a world, right? So, and I don't know, I really should know more. I think that grant's still running. So, there's lots of opportunities in Canada, but there's plenty south of the border, and that may or may not be more complicated. Sometimes there's issues with getting your prize money and getting the taxes off and all that stuff. But sometimes it's worth it with the exchange and everything, right? By the time you pay all your stuff, it's still good. But you have to get there. The border often doesn't like to hear, I'm a singer going in for a competition. That's the truth, but they don't love that. They think that's very weird because they don't know if you're working. They're like, is it work? And you're like, well, no. And they say, are you being paid? And you're like, no, but I might cross my border again with money from your state. So, there's little things to be worked out, certainly, and definitely working, which it is not, competition is not the same thing, but working in the States has become, I think, more complicated than not of late. And it's harder to get dual, it's harder to get visas. That's too bad, but there's lots to do here too. So
yeah. In your performance life, is there any performances that stick out to you that were very powerful, or that you were like, this was like one of the best performances I ever did, or you felt so connected to the character? Or what, is there one that sticks out to you?
Probably one of my favorite sings was a Buxtehude, Jesu Nostri, and it was here in town, and it was with period instruments, and Mark Voronin is just so gracious as a conductor. And I hadn't sung any Buxtehude with instruments, I don't think, maybe a little bit with Tafel music, but I just remember that it was a very intimate performance. It was well received by the audience. It's music that I really like and is just a little bit different. And so, do I enjoy every Messiah? I really do. I'm such a junkie. Like, I'm so corny. Like, I really do still love every Messiah. I'm sorry, I'm just a Handel freak. But, these lesser known, if I may say that, but yeah, lesser performed early works also are very near and dear. And I think that was I still listen to that particular performance. I listen to other recordings of that work because I just like it.
Yeah.
And then maybe Fledermaus in concert was a tough one. We learned it very, very fast. I wanted to take on the role knowing that I was pregnant. I showed up pregnant without telling them I'd be pregnant, doing the countess equivalent, right? They thought it was funny, which is good. But I underestimated how taxing that would be. I'd never sung I don't think I'd yet sung pregnant. And then I did this new role with full orchestra about halfway through my first pregnancy. And it took a toll. It was tough.
Yeah.
And then I sang through my other 2 pregnancies as well. And I felt great about it. And I sang later on in that first pregnancy and felt better. I think the toll of even an in-concert opera, I underestimated the physicality, and I wanted it to be a little bit different, better, whatever. But I tried to embrace it. I mean, I definitely wore all the tight gowns. I didn't care. And it was just sort of a funny thing. Okay, so
Oh my God.
it's the triangles. How is that? But anyway, so like, I don't think Pamina should be pregnant. It's a little funny when I don't know. I thought it worked, but no, it was good. It was
Yeah.
good costume changes and whatever. And I think like I said, I felt good, and I felt I could sing well whilst pregnant, but the whole of the production is lasting with me, maybe for the wrong reasons. There were ups and downs, let's say, of that first that role. I should reprise and see if I can sing her again. I don't know.
So that's actually something that I don't hear people talk about much. What changes in the voice or the body when you're singing pregnant?
A lot.
Well, yes, but
depending on who you are, right? So some women, and we should talk about it more, some women feel more cyclical affect than others all the time. So hormonally, it's wild and it changes throughout the pregnancy. And so your space and your hormones are forever changing, and lots of other things too. So the thing that the hormone stuff is going to affect to a certain degree, mucus production and everything. So I didn't find that was terribly problematic for me. That didn't bother me. What you do definitely have is you run out of room eventually. All your organs come up into your rib cage because there's a person where your organs were. So your liver is now under your bra. Your lungs are much higher than they usually would be. But I think Fleming said this too. I might misquote, but someone else had heard years ago saying she really appreciated the resistance. And I would say I agree with that. It's right there. So when you go to fill up, you don't have as much space, but what you do have is that sort of like true appoggio, right? You really are leaning on usually a butt if they're head down like they're supposed to be, right? So your diaphragmatic function comes against something more directly. And so I found that okay. You get to a point and you just can't breathe. But I sang as late as 35 weeks, about 5 weeks from delivery, with my third, and you are bigger and lower generally as you go on, right? And so I was sizable with Eva and singing, I don't recall. Oh, anyway, something, look it up. A mass, an oratorio with symphony. And yeah, I mean, I did say to the tenor beside me, I might need you to put your hand out if I can't get up out of this chair.
Yeah.
I was like, if I put my hand out like this, I just really need you to put your hand out so I can get up, and then I'll be fine. And I But yeah, singing wise, that felt really good. Which one was that? I can't remember. I'm gonna have to look that up. Anyway, so that felt pretty good. The after is much harder, and you can't plan that. I mean, I knew that 2 of the 3 were going to be C-sections. So knowing that the second and third were C-sections, I knew a little bit more what it took to recover.
Yep.
But each one's different. And my diastasis was, my division of my abdominals was worse with my third. So that takes a long time to put all your organs back where they're supposed to be and rebuild the core. And, applause to anybody that sings through the pregnancy, and they you should sing during and before and after, in my opinion. But people that are like, well, I'm due January 1st, so then I'll, like, I could book something, because most people are booking very far in advance, not someone like me, but lots of singers are booking really far in advance. But say you're due in November and you want to sing a Messiah in December, maybe.
Tough one.
That's tough. That's something you have to look at and think, okay, well, if it is a C-section and I'm not to pick anything up or necessarily be able to do stairs effectively for 6 weeks, can I stand and sing and fill up and sustain and emote? And by the way, you're not sleeping, and there's all the other things wrong, like, postpartum, like, it's a lot.
Oh my gosh.
But people do it, and they should do it. It's just, it's something that we have to consider, those of us who have or want children, and other singers don't have to think about that as much. So, yeah.
Speaking of some interesting things that have happened, or different things that are staged or used backstage, did you have any like backstage stories or shenanigans, or maybe some mishaps? Because Simi and I were talking, we were like, we don't think Beth made a mistake.
You're always too perfect, and so
Oh no,
we need to hear the shit that happens.
Oh, that's not true at all. No, I've backstage, I can't think of anything. I have a story from a competition that's kind of funny, but backstage, that old adage about treating everybody with respect and kindness, and down to absolutely stage management, but anyone who's cleaning the stage, or wardrobe, everybody, right? Like, it really is important, and the whole thing is so collaborative that there's just no room for attitude backstage. And even at an audition, like, the pianists talk, and they often talk to directors, and it's amazing to me, the singers that just don't treat their pianist with the respect they deserve, and think that that's somehow not going to be relayed back to the team, right? So yeah, backstage, as long as you're nice and yes, prepared and prompt helps. I mean, I've been backstage where people have been racing to do last minute things, and thankfully, no, that has not generally been me. But I've been waiting for my scene partner to be ready. Makes me nervous. It is what it is. If he's late, he's late. I've seen tenors wrap black electrical tape around their ankles because they forgot socks.
Wait, that's
no one was the wiser. Like, do what you gotta do. And there was a guy at a competition who brought 2 left shoes, which was also awesome, and contemplated whether to go on in his sneakers and he borrowed shoes from someone backstage. So, it pays to be a good colleague, right? But it was my audition for Ottawa. It was a ridiculous snowstorm. I had planned to drive instead of fly. I mean, why wouldn't I fly now? But of course I was going to drive. It's 6 hours or 7 hours or whatever. Like, I'm going to drive. I was going to drive myself, and my sweet sister showed up at my door in the middle of this blizzard and said, I'm going with you. I'm going to help navigate. And so we're in our 20s and we take off for Ottawa. I think we both worked our day job, and my audition was like 10 a.m. the next day. So we're driving in the dark to Ottawa through a blizzard. This is the first week of January, I think. And we got to the hotel rather late, and we're just collapsing, and this hockey team is just running amok in we were the room closest to the door, so they're slamming through the door and running up and down the stairs to the next floor, and it was just ridiculous. And we thought, oh my gosh, after holding the wheel for 7 hours, I'm not going to sleep at all, and I think I was starting with Je me vivre or something the next morning. So my sister, who was in school to be, a social worker, opens our door at 2 a.m. and says, hey, my sister has an opera audition tomorrow and you will be quiet. And shut the door. And they all dispersed, and we heard doors shut. And so, okay. So we slept for 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever. Got dressed. We exit our room the next morning for breakfast and to get downtown by 10. And all the kids are milling about again. And they all go, oh, it's the ladies. It's the ladies. We're 22. Anyway, they're like, oh. These are tween male hockey players. Anyway, so they're all gathered around the elevator, looking at their feet stuff. And we push the button and we're waiting. And then one of them kind of comes forward of the group and he says, I hope your operation goes well today. We're so sorry. And right? Because what's opera audition? They heard operation. They were mortified. And I just sort of let it happen. I was really dolled up too, right? I'm going to my operation. And, that was that. So
that is an amazing story.
Actually, it was not bad, actually. And yeah, thanks to my sister, I would have been all on my own and probably wouldn't have had the guts or the energy to yell at the hockey team, but she handled it and they apologized, and yeah.
Hey, the job got done.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you transition from performance to teaching? Because that is sort of your primary now.
Well, and I wouldn't call it a transition. My intention was to always do both, and I've always done both. I mean, the only times I paused teaching was if it was impossible to do so. So summers in Europe with programs or apprenticeships or whatever, and the length at Ottawa, it just didn't make sense. It just wasn't we didn't have Zoom. It just and I wouldn't have had the time. I was full time with that company. And that's what can be really tricky, because as colleagues of mine went from, so there were only 4 of us officially in that program. And then they needed the odd fill in to make enough people for Così and stuff. But they really only had soprano, bass, mezzo. And we could do an abridged Hansel and Gretel with that. So the baritone is now he's a Western grad. He's now in Belgium and working all around Europe. So he went from Ottawa, I came back here and started teaching, was hired by Western the next year, kept performing, did a lot less traveling, which was my choice, but also I'll explain in a second why mostly that happened. Mark went straight to Europe and stayed. Sarah went to Europe, and I went too, about 2 years after Ottawa for this big audition tour with that agency that didn't pan out. But all 4 of us tried Europe. None of the girls stayed. Mark stayed. Sarah's an instructor. Marie-Claire is in the Hull region and still she put out a Christmas album last year. She's kind of doing her own thing, and she worked for Opera Lyra's chorus for a couple of years. But anyway, as people went out and about, opera was certainly going to take you away longer and for more periods of time. And so friends that were trying to amass studios or teach a little bit more who were doing opera primarily, you know, they'd just get a rapport with a student and they'd say, okay, I'm gone for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Be on the, you know, flip side. Again, we didn't have Zoom and what are you going to do? So a lot of my colleagues who were doing, you know, opera for 10 weeks and then learning another role for 3 months and then opera, they found that that wasn't working fantastically with singing. And lots of people do it. When I was in my undergrad, Jackie was still away doing certain roles, and then I would work with another teacher, and I loved that. Yeah. But other teachers found it too disruptive, or other students found it disruptive. So you kind of had to balance, do I want to work with an active singer? The trade-off being they're going to be away. Yeah. Concert work made that much easier because you could fly in and out of Pittsburgh in one weekend. Yeah. So not only did I have sort of a preference for that repertoire, that lifestyle was much easier. And because my first husband was so ill, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. He was always very supportive of my education and career and goals, but and he was a performer himself for a while, but in a very different field, as a professional magician. So he understood the away stuff, but as his illness progressed, it made no sense to me to be in Europe for 8 weeks at a time. It was just too hard. So it's not putting it on him, but life happens. Yeah. And things that I would have never been able to predict as a second year undergrad who was engaged and like, I'm going to get married between my degrees. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I mean, stuff happens all the time that people shift ideas. Am I still doing almost exactly what I wanted to do? I'm very, very privileged to, yes, I have always wanted to teach and sing. Could I have done more singing, and would I have maybe focused on Europe specifically a little bit more? For sure. Yeah. If Rye hadn't been so sick. So, you know, that maybe segues into my little mantra, which is, I think that all artists really come or go by 4 pillars that may or may not be of equal value, but, you know, there's luck, life, talent, and training. And so if you look at those 4 things, you could have any 3 really hard, but you do need all of them, even if it's only 1% or 2, but I think they're almost equal, truly. You have to have some sort of raw talent. Like, there's just no way around it. Can everyone learn to sing? Sure. Mm-hmm. Can everyone learn to sing to the degree that people want to pay to hear them? Potentially not. Mm-hmm. And that talent has to, like, I would group in there your own desire to want to do it. I know lots of talented singers who know that they are not cut out / have any desire to be a professional soloist. Yeah. They're either professional choristers or they're this or that. And I'm not saying that, I'm not ranking that in any order. There are wonderful singers who are talented singers, but either didn't care about the other 3 things or didn't have the drive. So that talent to me wraps up, you know, ambition, all of that, focus. And then training's important. If you have talent, but you didn't or couldn't train the way you wanted to. Yeah. And then life, you may or may not have the resources, the health, the this, the that to do it, yeah. Or to do it the way that you thought you would. And that luck component being, some of this business is just tough. Yeah. And it's just where you are, who you know, and some of that's good and some of that really sucks. So I think those 4 things really compound to help and maybe hamper young artists. And yeah. I've definitely experienced all of them in the good and bad of all of those titles. But yeah, the life column for me, I worked really hard. I waitressed for 10 years through high school, through university, after I was gigging regularly. Like, if a good year, I wrote this down once, my goal coming out of my master's was, okay, what if I could have 4 paid gigs a year? Let's start with 4. What if I could get like a passion and some summer festival and something else and a Messiah or two, let's say 4 to 5, and what that would pay, even that is not going to pay my mortgage. Yeah. It's just not in Canada. It's not. Yeah. Certainly not concerts. They pay very well for the amount of time you're there, but if you're only there a week, that's only 5 weekends of the year. This is not a life, like a mortgage pay. So I'm going to teach. How much am I going to teach? How am I going to balance that with what I want to do performing? Yeah. And I digress, but that was sort of how I tried to cultivate things. Would I have done things differently without that life pillar throwing me some curveballs? Yeah, but it's still okay. Yeah. I guess is what I'll say. It's still okay.
So in your teaching then, because you're very original in the place that you are now, where you teach a lot of crossover stuff and not a lot of people do in the institutions.
Yeah.
So how did you arrive at that? Like, were you interested in musical theater as well as classical music growing up? Did you do that sort of training in addition to the classical stuff?
I always loved music theater. I had an aunt who took me to all kinds of things. She and I just went to 2 shows together this past weekend at Stratford. But when I was really little, she took us to stuff, and my parents took us to stuff. And there was tons to see in this area. I mean, Stratford Festival alone was just a, wealth of riches for years. And I auditioned there when I was really, really little, but couldn't tap dance. Like, I mean, it just, and that was really in a nutshell what happened. I love music theater. I can't really dance. I'm going to blame the heritage once again. Like, I really can't dance. It wasn't something, training, right? So if I had talent as a singer, and maybe could have as a dancer, but I had no training to go with that for the dance. I don't regret it. I don't think it was my niche, but I adored it. I adored watching it. I was in tons of community theater that taught me about stage. Like, it taught me so much to be in music theater productions, like, through all sorts of community things in high school and whatever. Like, it was a really great, again, community to be doing those things. And then coming out of an undergrad that was so focused on art, song, and opera, which I loved, I went there with that intention. Yeah. It never left me that educators and instructors, if you're going to work with anybody except the opera pursuer, they're probably going to sing music theater. Yeah. Like, of all the singers in the world, including anyone under 18 who's unlikely to sing opera as much, let's say, general statement, is music theater not this entire world where you're still triple threading, you're on stage? It's the direct and absolute descendant and cousin of opera. Yeah. But there are different things, not the least of which is dance and amplification, that I don't do a lot of in my own performing work. But I love the music, and I thought, as an instructor, I really want to know that stuff as well. I don't want to be someone trained in one way or the other who can't do more. And you're right, there's not a ton of people who enjoy doing both, perhaps. Maybe that's super general too. But at the institutional level, you're right. They are and should be experts in a field. So most people are experts in bel canto, as they should be at that level. Yeah. However, I'm not quiet about the fact that I think that music theater and the style in general should and could take a place in post-secondary institutions for no other reason besides, for lots of reasons, but also for the reason that educators are going to be directing children in musicals, not children in operas. Yeah. So I also sort of think that healthy singing is healthy singing. And, that's a whole episode for another time. Some people will say, you're wrong, belting is not, or whatever. And I personally obviously don't think that. Yeah. I'm not one of those people that has like a cutoff age for when you can start voice lessons, or when you can start belting, or when you can, I do a little have an age for when you can start opera, I will say that. And we all do, but the singers that come into this space are tending to want to do both things. and they do, and they enter both Nats categories, and I love that. And so Simi's fully aware, Cass also, that at the university level, I think that tradition should continue. Again, because even if you have no intention of pursuing music theater professionally as a performer, you will likely end up instructing it to some degree and should have some familiarity with the repertoire and with the style and what your voice can do. And we always see when you're in a theatrical setting in your home language, we get bigger everything. So the music theater recital that I force the undergrads to do is mostly for acting, ding, 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 because I see people risk and unfold in a way that they don't always give themselves permission to do in art song, in a way that we don't always see. Sometimes we do. Simi was the anomaly. Sometimes we don't, in terms of acting, we don't always see a foreign language art song come alive the same way we might see a piece from Avenue Q. It's funny. It's in my home language, probably, generally as well, right? Yeah. So I think that that's where the strengths lie in that rep, and it's important to at least have a knowledge of it or acknowledge it. If you're not going to teach it, don't teach it if you don't love it. Don't teach it if you don't understand it. But, in a program at a school like the one I teach at, with so much music education, those students are going to, at some point, instruct or direct a musical. So having them not sing any of it for 4 years makes not so much sense to me. So I do see a change coming. I know there's a change coming there. And so I, again, have always imagined that I would be involved in both. So I learned so much about theater from being in musicals, so that by the time I get into opera and I have to focus on language and lots of really nuanced production, perhaps I don't have to give so much brain to, maybe this is just so blonde, but anyway, maybe I don't have to give so much brain focus energy to, and down stage left is this way. Like, if you've been on stage for years, or even just a little bit, and you've been, it's all performing to me, and it's interacting with colleagues, and hopefully it's working with a pit, right? And so, having followed a conductor in music theater, again, in a home language, in generally a more casual genre, it absolutely trained me going forward into this opera stuff.
So actually, going back to technique, this is a bit of a pivotal question, but I was curious to know if you think to achieve, let's say, classical sound, to achieve a classical sound, is there only one technique that works?
No. Have we met?
I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for the viewers.
No, I mean, as many paths there are up the mountain, or through this wild world, if we even make it so small as the performing world, like as many different paths and ways to get there. I think being married to a school of technique, or listen, most instructors are going to start with what works for them, obviously, right? But if we only did that, none of us would teach a different fach. So that, or maybe we would. I mean, again, because I don't think that it's that compartmentalized. But I just absolutely think that the more you can possibly know about all different genres, styles, production, technique, schools of thought, historical references and implications, performance practice, all of it just has to compound to inform your practice. So of course you're going to have teachers with a preference for this or that. And I still remember, I've used this a couple of times. I remember a student early in my teaching at Western standing outside my door, and I could hear her talking to another student who said, "Ooh, Beth's marking my jury. What does she listen for?" And I thought, what is my student going to say? And the student said, Vowels. And I thought, well, that's not wrong. But it was sort of funny, right? Like, what is my stereotypical thing? And she went on to say, this student, she was like, well, she's good at coloratura, so she loves early music and she'll listen for coloratura and all this stuff. But, I think she would prioritize vowels, question mark, and like musicianship. And she said something about, she did okay. She said something about like the full physicalization, emotive side of things. We put a lot of labels on people. There's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of loyalty and, whatever, labeling in the industry probably. And I just think that's really silly. And of course, if you're going to do two genres, if you're going to instruct two genres, you've got to have combining pedagogies, but also a knowledge of those styles at the very least, and potentially even more specialization. Like, apparently, I'm going to give chats this year on, Handelian ornamentation and belt. Because in a nutshell.
That's
right?
amazing. I love the spectrum.
But,
Yes.
where do I spend the most time? Probably on those two corner specialties out of the branches of those genres.
Yeah.
Simply because this, the little singers that do work for companies and want to maintain a healthy sound and whatever. And yeah, like Simi said too, like classical singers, quote, finding their chest voice and whatever. Of course, like you're singing Goldrich and Heisler, and all of a sudden they have permission to be in this talk singing open chest dominant production. And I go, where was that in your Volcom? Where was that in your Wolf even, right? And they're like, oh yeah, right. So I don't think they're separate entities. So that's why we call it crossover, right? But yeah, that was a really long answer to, is there one way to do things? No.
But I think it's important for people to hear that, because so many people are like, oh, my teacher is right.
Oh, that's so sad. And any teacher that says that they're right, and I mean, this is one of the places where I should be like, don't say this out loud, but any teacher that thinks that they're rightist,
yeah,
is probably, we'll just leave, is probably, because really, like, who in art knows everything? Or, we know a lot of things, but I think it's dangerous. I think it's fair to use that word. I think it's dangerous to profess that you know all the things, or that you know extremely better than anyone else.
it's very true.
You can't know all the things. And it does take a village. You should have a teacher and maybe another one, if people aren't so territorial about things all the time, and a coach and another coach and an acting, specialist and an Alexander technician, like in a, even at Ottawa. So we go to Ottawa, we're only there 6 months. We've come from all different places. Our job is to sing 2 or 3 roles in this time and present to audiences. We joined the union, so the union gave us certain benefits as well, so we had to join equity. And then we had a massage therapist, an Alexander technician. We did yoga every morning. We did stage fighting for our own safety. I mean, that was because we were training as well, but we had stage combat because we were going to need it in our shows and other shows. We had, but yeah, in terms of a village, right, we had voice teachers, master classes, an acting coach who really impacted how I went on to do things, Alexander technician, massage therapist, dance coach. There was a Feldenkrais woman, there was wardrobe, there was publicity. We had a marketing manager who wasn't just for us, but who worked for the company, who came in to talk to us about social media and website and business and all that stuff, right? So, I mean, here we were, so many villages, and if any one of them had said, oh, I know the most, or I am the person you should most listen to, or whatever, like that just doesn't make any sense.
No, exactly.
So the voice teacher is going to say, can you see so-and-so this week for I'm talking about your alignment, so also work on that with your Alexander coach, or your language coach says, okay, now take this back to your teacher, and this is what I want to hear from a diction perspective, but make sure that jives with her pedagogy. And hopefully that pedagogue is saying, and this is just me in this moment saying that I think this is working for you. And someone next week is gonna maybe, it's the beauty and the hideous, is that it is art, and someone, there's a lot of opinions, and someone will come at you the next week with a new thought, right?
For me, you have helped me so much, even with career coaching and different paths I can take, or I will just be like, I need help me make lists. But that is really something special. I know you do really well with your students and help them not only as a vocalist, but in this career path and different options everybody can take. So has that always been your philosophy as like a teacher, to also help like career coaching as well, or did it kind of just happen naturally?
I think again, you have to be careful. And I don't think those lists are any less important to an instrumentalist. However, it's a little bit of a different field again for what we do. And so I think it's just very natural that an instructor of voice be somewhat involved in, okay, I'm going to try to help you achieve your vocal goals, and I'm going to try to help teach you some things about voice in my limited, beautiful, whatever. And in the meantime, you're going to take that and do something with it. And so if I have absolutely no knowledge of your do something or your goals beyond, I want to learn how to trill this year, great, for what? I think it's really important to be looking forward. And I know like my oldest child syndrome is showing, because I am a little bit product focused. I do admit to that. I think most people that I work with are generally working towards a goal, and it might not be extremely clear, but even if it's just, I want to compete at Kiwanis this year and maybe provincials or whatever, then we know the type of rep to follow and the type of things to look at, right? Versus someone who's very, very here for their own exploration. And I have a handful of those, but the majority of my students are coming with a very, real goal, be they really, really young or older. So I think the mentorship should and can safely go beyond the pedagogy. I think it's just natural to say, well, if this is your goal, if you want to work for Stratford Festival someday, and you've worked for Drayton, but you're trying to figure out how, do you need an agent? Do you need this? Do you need more dance training? And try to help in any way that I can, which is often referencing, know what you know and what you don't know. So if somebody's having this, that, or the other thing, they're going to be referred to an SLP or an Alexander technician, or, whatever it is that they need to help further refine their entire product. I'm sure there are teachers, and it's fine to be a teacher who does the pedagogy and helps with that, and you have other villagers. I guess I can't help but take on a little bit more. I will try not to momager everybody, and certainly it's not our job to play therapist, and we need to be a bit careful. It's a very emotional, very personal thing that we do, very personal. So stuff happens, stuff's going to come up in studio, and you could spend again a day and a half talking about boundaries and things in that way, but it's okay. I'm okay to hear it, and then I will do my best to refer. But yes, I would like to be useful beyond the actual music page if I can be.
We both love this question. What is your why for yourself as a teacher and performer and a musician and an artist? What's your why to be it?
I think people should think about this more, and I think I have. Not that I was prepped with this question specifically, but I've asked students this, and my version is usually a little bit more specific. I say, do you have something to say? And if the answer is still yes, then you have to do it. And you know, there's that old, if you can picture yourself doing anything else, do that. Well, yeah, I guess, but nowadays we should in fact probably do something else. And that's, so I don't think that's entirely fair, to be realistic. I think, do you have something to say? It made sense to me. And I think that's kind of my why. I have things to say. I've been a ridiculously loud, verbose person my whole life. I love storytelling. And so that's what it is. I have something to say. And so, and I say that in with the least ego possible, if that's right. What I really mean is, can I be a vessel for this wonderful music? And can I share that and make an impact on anybody ever, including myself? So I think it's twofold. I have something to say for myself and for others. And then I hope to bring whatever it is they need, the comfort, the what have you, much as it delivers back to me. The energy of an audience and other singers and musicians who I've, you know, watched and admired for years have fed me in a way that I can only aspire to feed others. And that's all very about the sharing and caring, I guess. I have something to say. Hopefully it means something to someone, if not me, at least. And so I think that's why, if I can instruct someone who finds meaning in what they're doing and is able to share it with even more people, great. If I sing something for someone and they are moved, and so am I, that's it.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
Are we ready? Rapid fire. We got 6 minutes. Let's go, people. You go
rapid. I'm going first.
Yeah.
Advice for young singers going for it.
Be your own weird. Be your own weird. Look at the pillars. Look at the 4 things, right? Look at life, luck, talent, and training, and try to balance it like you have to. And acknowledge that some of that is beyond your control, right? So it's a little bit of let go, and be your own weird. That's really, and make lists. Come on, at the end of the day, we still have to be organized enough. Show up on time and make lists. Like, that is happening. Sorry.
Okay, I need all of that. Thank you.
We like lists in this studio.
Show up on time.
If you weren't a singer, what would you be?
Oh. I mean, saying a teacher is sort of lame because I also am that, but like some sort of instructor. I mean, I love languages. I thought I might be a translator and really work in linguistics for a while. But I also love medicine. Like, I love blood and guts, like a lot. Like, I'm convinced I could staple anybody in a crisis. Like, I wanted to take out people's, I want to take out my own staples. I
Wow.
think I was a nurse in a former life. Yeah. I really have no quease whatsoever.
Yeah, you were Nurse Ratchet. Like,
sorry, it doesn't bother me. So I'm like, I can help with this. No, I'm good in a crisis. It doesn't faze me.
Good.
Wow, I didn't know that.
You're a good mother.
Like it. Yeah, exactly. Except wiggly teeth. That's where I draw the line. Like, you can be like absolutely profusely bleeding from anything else, but not the teeth. No, mm-mm.
Okay.
Really?
No.
Okay, next one. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I mean, the places I'd most like to go back to are Holland and Italy, because I need more. But I really want to go to Jordan.
Oh,
it's been on my list for a long time. I'd like to go to Jordan, probably Thailand. I've been to China and India, but the in-between would be nice.
Yeah.
Jordan's really gorgeous, but it's hot as heck, so letting you know.
Also not good at that, yeah.
Who took you to your first opera?
I know who took me to my first musical, but my first opera.
You can say your first musical.
My first musical was in Toronto. It was Phantom of the Opera. And it was with my school. And I was like 8. And there's an entry in my diary about what I was going to wear and how excited I was. And then I came home and I sang like the whole thing from memory. And my parents were like, that's weird. All right, well, we might have to deal with that later. I think Carmen was my first opera. And I'm sure it was parents, but I don't even remember. I think it was with Opera Ontario, which back in the day went between Hamilton and Kitchener.
Wow.
Carmen and Flute are good beginner operas, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cass?
Yeah. What is something that made you happy today?
Today?
Yeah, today.
My kids giving each other hugs after they probably pushed each other down, but then they always say, give a hug.
That's so cute.
That's cute. Who do you fan person over? Like what opera singer specifically?
Lizette a little bit these days, I gotta tell you, right? But I think I would fall down for Joyce. Like there's just no ways around it. Like if I actually saw Joyce somewhere, and probably she can go a lot of places without people like clawing on her, even Joyce, right? Like there is a sort of bizarre level of celebrity in this industry, right? Yes. So I mean, maybe I'm full of crap. Maybe everybody knows who Joyce is, but if she was in Pearson and I was too or something, like I think I would be really ridiculous. I really do. I think it would be a problem. Or I'd freeze up and not be able to like do anything and just be like, and it's a good thing that Jamie knows who Joyce is, because he'd be like, wasn't that Joyce DiDonato?
And he'd be like, yes, we're not talking about it until we get in the car.
That's right.
Oh gosh. Yeah, same.
Same.
Okay. What is your favorite board game? So random.
There's this really old board game called Rat Race that my family played all the time, and we like it. It's like a weird version of Monopoly, but I would say Rat Race.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I don't know it. I love board games, so.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Well, I was gonna say punctual was like on the tip of my tongue, but I'll just say German because that'll take care of some stuff. So, like I've never lived there, but like if that sums up qualities for any person, I joke about it a lot, right? So I'm a little bit German, I'm a little bit goofy, and I'll say empathetic, because I feel things very deeply and I have lived some stuff. And so I feel like I can meet people where they are even more now than 10 years ago.
Good ones.
Okay. If you could travel to any year, past or future, to meet somebody, who would it be?
My boyfriend. Handle like all day long. Like, is that even a question? Like, I would go meet Handel. I would probably hang out and fangirl all over the first performance of Messiah, and he'd be like, oh, that needs redoing. And then I'd work on it some more, and then I'd follow him around, and I'd be like, I want to sing Alcina, and he'd be like, okay. I don't know. That's what I would do.
Oh my gosh, I bet Handel would write something for you.
Oh yeah. Are you kidding?
Oh yeah.
Come like, on. Oh, so this is the person who has been doing all of that I want for this.
This is the type of singer that can do it. Okay.
Can you imagine though? Like if I went today, like I'd be a giant. Like I'd be so enormous to handle, right? Or to anybody from that time period, right? Like I'm 5'6", I'm like normal sized-ish, I think. Modern Canadian, but like I would be enormous. He'd be like, what is this giant that I could put on stage? Like I'm gonna write some opera about this bizarrely humongous pale blonde soprano.
He'd probably think you're a dramatic mezzo or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
You should be the mother and the witch.
Sorry, how tall is Handel?
I don't know if we know that. We probably know that. But it's just like when you look at like armor and outfits that we have from people have gotten a lot bigger. So I'm just picturing my modern self with my glasses on my head, my big earrings, being like, yo, handle. Let's hang out.
Oh my God.
And my bad German and my anyway. So
Absolutely.
you're right. I gotta go teach now.
Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Yeah.
My pleasure. There's my other computer starting up.
All right.
These are the days. Ta-da!
Have a
This
great night.
light screen on the whole time. All right, y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
I got a mug.
Show me. Ah, wait.
It's so cute.
That is so
It
cute.
says love on the other side. There's no tea in it because it's too hot here. There's no air conditioning. But I put some water in it because I was like, we gotta.